Hello, everyone. Yes, it is our favorite time of Wednesday. It is Small Biz Talk. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever we get ready for having these presentations, we have the most amazing conversations. So I'm very excited for today. So if it's your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting-edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicated to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. Lori, oh my gosh, how are you? Happy Wednesday. I am sending you like the happiest vibes because I think today's going to be awesome. I just feel it in my bones.
I agree. I think so too. And let's get started because we have a whole lot to cover today, and I want to make sure we got ample time for everything. And of course, I've got to do my little rant and rave at the beginning, as I always do. I forget what Krista has a name for it. Maybe she's here and she can put it in the chat what she calls it, but my little discussions at the very beginning. Okay, let's go. Um, no further ado. Next week, we've got Greg coming on. He's also an SBDC advisor and an owner of Locally. He's going to talk a lot about restaurant business. He's going to talk about organization, running companies, growing companies, all those cool things that we love to hear about. And he's got his perspective of being an entrepreneur, a business owner, and being an advisor. So I love that when somebody's able to come on and share not only from their own experiences, but the experiences of others. We're going to have Megan come back on, Megan Johnson, at the July 22nd. Now, she has been on before. She is the CEO of Stradivarius, which is a company that helps companies with sales strategies, growth strategies, etc. Last time I had her on the show, we were discussing her company. It was an interview about her company, but in the conversation, because she's got a veteran sales person, she was talking a lot about getting sales, having a strategy, documentation, and so many questions came up that I went back to her and said, "Hey, come on and let's just talk about sales for I'm going to call it the non-salesperson, because a lot of you guys that have your own company, you didn't set out to be a salesperson, but hello, you are now. So if you want a good, just overall discussion of what you can do, how you can document, ways to go about it, that's what we're going to talk about. It'd be very, very helpful. And then at the end of the month, Ashley Arnold was on a show, and she has Lady Cakes, which is this cute little cart with dessert trays on it. I'm simplifying it. It's much more than that. And it was one of the very favorite shows because she talked a lot about the financial models I created. We actually did one for her company. She's worked with them intensely and learned a lot from it. And so she, in this episode, shared so much great information. We're going to bring that back and share it again. So that is what we have coming up. Now for the talk for today. This is one I always tell people, and I want to speak about it a little bit more. So my title is A Sole Prop is a Legitimate Business Structure. And this is what I'm speaking to. So I want to talk about something I hear constantly, and it's the idea that the sole proprietorship isn't a real business. People think that for some reason. So many people, especially the newer entrepreneurs, have been led to believe that if you're not an LLC, you're somehow doing it wrong or putting yourself at a huge risk. So here's the reality, guys. Sole proprietorships are still one of the most common and legitimate business structures in America. According to IRS data, there are over 31 million sole proprietor filing returns, And when you include single member LLCs, which are taxed the same way, they make up the vast majority of small non-employer businesses. So what has changed over the last 15 to 20 years is the heavy marketing push from companies that profit from forming LLCs. They've convinced many people that they must have an LLC for protection, even when their business model is low risk and you're just starting out. Here's something else that often gets overlooked. In many states, including California, a sole proprietorship doesn't require registration with the Secretary of State. It doesn't trigger the annual $800 franchise tax fee, and it doesn't require ongoing public filings like the Statement of Information. What does this mean? This means more privacy, which everybody wants more privacy. Sole prop is the answer on this. Complete autonomy and no unnecessary government database or annual fees just for existing. You can start and operate with far less complexity and cost. And if you're worried about risk, there are other tools available that many people don't hear about because they're not being heavily marketed on social media. I've talked about this before. Errors and omissions, known as E&O or professional liability insurance, often provides stronger practical protection for service-based businesses than an LLC alone. So good policies cover legal defense costs during the expensive discovery phase and can even cover settlements and judgments, something a simple LLC cannot. So I'm not saying an LLC is never the right choice. I'm saying it should be a thoughtful decision based on your actual risk level, not a default because everyone online says you need one. So here's the bottom line I'm trying to say today. A sole proprietorship is a real, legitimate business structure. For many of you, especially if you're testing an idea, providing services, or keeping things simple, it can be the smartest and most practical place for you to start. So don't let this fear-based marketing push you into complexity and extra cost before you even know if your business model works. Okay, you got this. Choose the structure that fits your business, not the one that is being sold the hardest. So with that, very exciting to get in today's show. We've got welcome back guests, welcome back guests, welcome back guests. I don't even know how many times on the show at this point. Xiomara Palma is the founder and CEO of Solvit HR, a boutique HR consultancy built specifically for small businesses. With over 15 years of hands-on experience, Xiomara is a certified HR consultant who has worked across a wide range of industries, helping business owners navigate the complexities of compliance while boosting their profitability through people productivity. She brings a fresh perspective to human resources. She's not just about policies and handbooks. She's about building workplace cultures that are legally sound, operationally efficient, and generally empowering for both the employees and the employers. Xiomara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back, Lori. Thanks for having me.
You're always going to be back. I always say that, you are the number one HR person. HR people and CFOs always had a tough relationship, as you know, right?
Yes.
And, it's like HR people sometimes would irritate me in my turnarounds, my private business, because I'd be like, okay, I know what you're trying to do. It's great, but we don't have the friggin' money. It was like a not understanding about the holisticness of the business. You have to worry about the finances as well as worry about making sure you have incentive programs and everything for your employees. What I love about you on so many different levels, one, you stay up on all the laws. Two, you understand them. You are also able to think outside the box. You're not, but the law says. You look at the big picture and reality, and you also are very conscious of the financial impact of HR decisions and the legal impact. And that is just not commonplace, especially in somebody who serves small businesses. So there's your intro from me.
Well, thank you.
So
Thank
true.
you so much. Yeah, I think I think in my early career I was guilty too of being like that HR person that was so like worried about the compliance side of things and doing things right and doing things. We can't discriminate, we can't fire them, we can't do this, we can't do that. um and I think like in our, speaking generally, right, I think like, in our education as HR practitioners, we focus so much on like doing things like by the law and by the book that we neglect the financial side of the HR, the whole HR function. Like there is a whole financial side of things. There is a whole financial side of that is going to impact, um, it's going to impact the finances if we fire someone like, for like not a good cause, right? Like they eventually maybe get unemployment and that is going to impact the finances. If you have a high turnover, you're constantly going to be paying for payroll tax. And those are the things that, we as HR practitioners, a lot of times that's where there's friction with like, the CFOs and stuff, because we don't do a very good job at speaking about that impact. We just see like, well, we can't let them go. We can't, put them on leave. We can't like, keep on hiring more people. Like we know there's a cost, but a lot of times we are not able to like give the specifics of what that cost is.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where the friction comes.
This is an interesting maybe philosophical and maybe legal statement, and I'm going to own it. I'm not going to put it on you, Xiomara. I'm going to own it. You could say, Lori, yes or no on this, right? But I think about this a lot lately. We're going to be talking about rules and laws and, like you said, talking and thinking outside the box. I remember, I always say to you guys, I'm old, I've been around for a long time, but I feel as though when I was younger in business and in life, it was really kind of simple and easy to follow laws and rules. You knew what they were, you followed the law, you didn't go around breaking it other than speeding tickets and things like that, right? But generally, you could pretty much stay within the rules. But I feel as though laws have gotten where they're almost contradicting and they are so challenging now because so much is mandated. And in business, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more too, you get where you have to choose between certain laws, following them by the letter, and being in business. Now, that sounds like crazy talk when I say it, and I even sound crazy talk to me. Now, I'm not saying that a bigger corporation is struggling with that. They got lawyers to get out of it, to be honest with you. But no, the smaller companies that don't have the ways and means, whether it's profitability or access to all of the experts they need to be aware of the laws, it's almost like I don't know too many that aren't breaking a law on
Yeah.
purpose, not knowing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is true. And in particular, when it comes to HR, we wouldn't think about like breaking the law, right?
Right,
We
right.
wouldn't, that's what HR is all about. Um, but a lot of times, really, a small business, they have to assess, right? Like, the pros and cons of like following one of the laws or not following one of the laws, and what are the consequences for not doing so.
Yeah, I have come to the conclusion, I came to this conclusion about 10 years ago. And guys, I'm not saying anybody come to this conclusion. I'm owning this. But I have no longer seen things as laws as much as suggestions with possible repercussions. And you just have to look at it and see. And people say, that's terrible to say. And I go, don't you ever speed? Aren't you doing the same thing? You're seeing the speed limit as a suggestion with a possible repercussion, and you're choosing. So whether we admit it or not, we're actually doing that quite a bit. But I feel like that kind of thought has to be in place in more things than it ever had to before. And I see this not only in HR, I see this in the legal structures and following the compliance on everything. I see it across the board because you've got so many people being sold how simple it is to start a company, and all you do is get this app and you go through this payroll company online and it manages things, but it's not telling you that the laws have gotten so much more complicated. I always say there's the perfect storm. You are being told it's simpler and the laws are getting more complicated, and it's the perfect storm in the middle. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. To share a story too, when it comes to payroll, a lot, So these are all the behind the scenes stuff, right, that people don't talk about. But just a few days ago, I actually had someone reach out to me because they got a notice from a labor commissioner claim, and they have a hearing on the 30th, which is like a very like unlike process for the labor commissioner. They technically usually give time for their employer to respond, and then they go into like a hearing. Anyhow, so the story behind this is that the person that would run his payroll would actually keep the paper records, right? They had like paper timesheets, and then this person had a platform when they were run payroll for this business. Is the doctor's practice, and long story short, this person like somehow the relationship went sideways with the doctor or the business owner, and this person stole all the payroll data, all the timesheets, all the payroll records. And now she's filed for this claim with the labor commissioner claiming she's owed all this overtime, all these violations, right? Like meal premiums, rest breaks. And the business owner doesn't have evidence, right? Because she stole all the documents.
Wow.
So yeah, so these are the things, the processes, the systems to set in place, in when it comes to payroll too, that people don't really think about. And we're talking about financial impact to a business. These are the things that will have a financial impact if you don't set it appropriately, you don't have the right systems, and you don't have the right people running it, and you also don't have oversight of that process.
Yeah, speaking of oversight on it, and this is a good shout out to anybody who has internal people doing any type of accounting. One of the rules that I've always had for small companies that have bookkeepers doing accounting is when the bank statement and the credit card statement come in the mail, a lot of them just hand that envelope directly to the bookkeeper. No, you open it, you scan it, you make sure there's nothing on it that doesn't look normal, and then you hand it to them. Because I had a company privately, my private business, they were about, 10, 15,000 or to a million, I mean, and the bookkeeper was slowly taking checks, writing them and taking them through, and ended up being, a good almost $50,000, but it was over years of 1,000 here and 1,000 there, and they would hand that over, and that, needs to be a system in place. So, and speaking of that, and we're going to start getting in some of these laws, when people talk to me and they ask me about, what are the chances and, is somebody going to find out? It's been my experience that the EDD, and I could be wrong on this, you have more experience with them than I do, but my experience is the EDD and even, the state, they aren't necessarily knocking door to door, although I've seen them do it. I'm not saying never, but they're not necessarily knocking door to door and checking records or, doing a stop check. It's when someone complains or files an unemployment document incorrectly, claiming that they're an employee when they were an independent contractor, or they file documents incorrectly, like the 990, 991, I think I got 940, 991, I got them wrong. But yeah, when they file some of those documents incorrectly, it's always prompted by a trigger, and then an investigation starts. Do you see that for the most part too?
Yes. Typically, that's how audits come about. I actually do have a couple of clients, unfortunately, that are going through audits right now. And one of them was because they hire an employee as an independent contractor per the employee's request, right? They said, hire me as an independent contractor. No biggie. Then they sue them, and then she filed for unemployment with EDD, and then EDD said, hey, wait a minute, you beautiful, nice small business, we don't have records of you contributing to payroll tax. To unemployment insurance, so this person's not eligible. And then they sent the labor commissioner to them. And so the labor commissioner ended up showing up at their place, knocking the door and saying, hey, give me all your payroll records for the last 4 years. The other scenario is so that's through EDD. The other scenario is, for example, like when I was kind of talking to you a little bit about this before we went on, is if you're making adjustments to your taxes, and in particular to like payroll tax that's been paid, they're going to question it, right? Like, well, wait a minute, why is there an
Yeah.
adjustment? And
Yeah.
why, why were they like, not paying tax before, but now they're like, or why were they like paying tax before or not paying tax now? Um, and that is where it's going to come to question. I do have a client right now that's going through an audit with EDD because their previous CPA, um, filed for taxes, or I don't know what exactly she did, but she ended up paying so much for taxes. And then the new CPA, kind of wanted to save the day and was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to save you so much money and we're going to make all these adjustments. Well, that just triggered EDD. And long story short, she initially, like, they can go back 4 years, right? So
Yep.
initially, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, she was hiring everyone on as a 1099 and not as an employee. And so that was part of this audit. They were requesting documents like, okay, show me the contracts you have with these 1099s, show me their W-9s, show me, how it is that they are in business on their own. And obviously, you know the answer to that.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Most of the time, right? Because some people are in business, but yeah, technically, I mean, that's usually how it comes about. The other way it can come about is, the one that is that is actually knocking on doors at times is Cal OSHA, right? So Cal
Yeah. Yeah.
OSHA can actually pick an area and say, okay, we're going to knock on doors at these 3 blocks today, and just kind of see.
Yeah.
And they are part of the labor, they are an extension, right? They are part of the labor commissioner's office. They're under the Department of Industrial Relations. So if they find anything, like after speaking to employees, people start saying, oh, well, we're never going to break, or, whatever it may be, then that potentially could also trigger an audit.
Yeah, I've seen that with Cal OSHA before too. And we're going to get into some of these laws, but I got one last, and tell me if I'm correct on this. I think I am, but I may not be. I know it's true of payroll and I know it's true of sales tax, but isn't a lot of these HR laws too come under civil liability? So you can go, right, you can go, it doesn't matter if you close the company down. This is a personal thing. It's civil liability. A lot of people don't realize that. They say to me, and I hear it quite a lot, and people say, I'm going to form an LLC because now I'm at risk because I'm hiring employees. And I say the LLC is not protecting you at all from that risk. It's civil liability. HR laws are civil liability. I know payroll is, but I think across the board they are. So this concept of hiding behind a corporate shield for HR issues does not work. I mentioned I had a client that, made a mistake on their payroll used, I'm not big on using QuickBooks Payroll or any of those, and they have a civil liability and a lien against him and his 2 daughters in payroll because of it. And so a lot of people don't realize that. Well, let's jump into our first law. And what we were chatting about, guys, is kind of the reality of the situation. And we're going to be talking about some of these laws and some of the new changes, but we're going to be like, I like what you said, that nobody's talking about. We're going to talk about it in a way like we do on this talk show, like nobody's talking about, not just the law, but the choices that some people are having to make because of the financial impact of following the laws. So let's start out with our short description of AB5, because I find many people don't know what it is, but I'm hearing more people talking about it, but not understanding it. So Xiomara, give us our spiel. What in the world is AB5?
All right, guys, here we go. It never gets old, right? So AB5 is a law that went into effect right before COVID, starting in 2020, that basically created a new test to be able to assess whether a worker is an independent contractor or if they are actually an employee. And it created the ABC test. So 3 different prongs that someone must meet in order to be classified as an independent contractor. So A is basically that the employer doesn't have exertion of control over the worker, right? B is that they cannot be in the same line of business as your business. They're in a different line of business. So for example, we talk about like a plumber, work coming for like a bakery or an HR consultant, right? Coming to work for a plumbing company. And then C, that the independent contractor has to be an established business themselves or an established occupation, right? So if all three of those criteria are met, then this person potentially, and I say potentially purposefully, I'll talk about that in a second, but potentially can be an independent contractor, right? So there are all sorts of exemptions too. There's over 100 exemptions from the ABC test. For example, marketing, like professional services, human resources, marketing, graphic design. We have certain exemptions, but when we have exemptions from the ABC test, the original test before AB5, the original test that was in place, still applies to those positions to be able to determine if they are indeed independent contractors. And that original test is called the Borello test, and it focuses more on the control the employer has over the worker, right? So if they are doing the schedules, for example, if they are using the employer's equipment, if they are using or working out of the employer's location, right? They kind of start blending in with their actual employees. So that's essentially what AB5 is, and this was all over the news when right before COVID, right? This is what everyone was talking about, and then just kind of got overshadowed with COVID. But it was talked about so much because it's so controversial. It almost made it impossible for businesses to actually hire people as independent contractors.
Yep. And that's the part that I want to go into right now, because, many in the audience can be saying, oh, it's HR. I'm not having to hire employees. This doesn't concern me. I think AB5 was a game changer because it suddenly does concern you. Now, one of the things that, and you always correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I remember the law was written, it used on part B test, the word that if the person is involved in an activity, and the words I think they used almost to this letter was the usual course of business, of whatever the usual course of business is. Now, this to me is a definer because first of all, it's vague. I hate vague laws because that means it's going to be determined in the courts. But when you look at the usual course of business, what you're really looking at, Xiomara, is operations. See, that's what that's to me, it's operations, because usual course of business is operations. Why would a small company in the first place hire an independent contractor? Because they need to expand operations and can't afford employees. That has been the growth strategy, and not just a strategy, but often the only way a small business that doesn't have the capital to just bring on people can grow. They use an independent contractor. It was a way to have the assistance on an as-needed basis. They didn't have to pay out all of the other fees. Then they got to a point they could grow and financially afford, which often in practice, I've seen them then hire the independent contractor as an employee. They would grow into being an employee. This has been going on for eons. And I feel like AB5 wiped that out completely, and then also did the ultimate worst thing where a business that had been employing, or I shouldn't say employing, but paying independent contractors for who knows how long, suddenly forcing them to bring them on as employees. That's like changing your financial model overnight. In my world of CFO, that's like saying, hey, I think I'll drop our selling price by about $10 per unit because that's a great idea to succeed in business. It's the same thing. I don't know if $10, but you know what I'm saying? So it's this concept that how does the small company grow outside of AB5? So I want to put that out there, and then I want to break it down even more so. So what I want to first do is throw it back to you. Am I being the drama queen on this usual course of business directly reflecting in operations, or am I correct that that's what it's hitting?
No, you're not being the drama queen. That is correct. I mean, and I would say most of the businesses I meet, this is how they scale their business. You are, nail on the head on that. This is how they have a team. A lot of times I'm like, okay, how many employees? Well, I don't have employees. I have independent contractors. Unbeknownst to them, but this is how they've been able to grow and scale their businesses, through the years. And when I tell them about, we talk about the ABC test and independent contractor classification, and it's just like a deer in the headlights. Like, I didn't know about this law, and I didn't know about, all these things. And when we sit down and try to take a look at, sometimes converting the workers into employees, it's just not in the budget. They're
Yeah.
not able to do it, because it is going to cost, a little bit. There is payroll tax, there is workers' comp insurance. Um, and so it is a tough choice to make, and to be in compliance, so
Yeah. And true, and structurally, organizationally, they don't have the infrastructure to support all the HR trainings. I'm just going to call that in general, that must be conducted then when you even have several employees. So it's not even just a matter of it being more costly. It's the attention that needs to be given to the supporting of the laws of the employee. I know that there's also, so that's B. I want to go into part C now, and I want to talk about something I'm seeing quite a lot, Tamara. It's really interesting. So in part C, I call it the bona fide. I don't know if that's the proper term, but I always call it if you're a bona fide company, and we'll go over this so people know what I'm talking about. And it you can be excluded. You can hire a company, and the way the rulings have been is if you, and you'll repeat on this, but if they have the license, they're established, they have work coming from other clients, so you're not the only client. They do marketing to get new clients. It's really making sure that this company has been in business for some time. I feel as though two things I'm going to start with, and we'll take each one separately, is this definition of this bona fide company, which is the gateway to being able to hire someone outside of being an employee, is not clear. And this seems to not have well-defined boundaries. And I'm going to get into this after we discuss it. That's where I'm seeing it being, I'm going to use the word exploited right now in the marketplace, because there's so much confusion. People are thinking, just get an LLC and then I can hire you and it'll be fine, but it's not that clear. So can you give us any insight? Have they given more details on what defines a bona fide company? Can I hire this person and because they got an LLC, or does it got to be more specific? Or is it kind of something you can get somebody to get into any kind of structure? Because I know the trucking industries and other people have tried it and got caught doing it. So let me pass that on to you. Let's talk about C right now.
So technically, under the law, a part of the exemptions, there was a sequel law the following year, right, that carved out business to business exemptions and carved out a lot of the music industry, because under this new law, this new ABC, like producers and songwriters and everybody they were like technically now becoming employees.
Yeah.
So there was a carve out for a lot of industries, and also the business to business, like the bona fide side of things, as you mentioned, right? So there are certain criteria they have to meet. So certainly, if it is an established business already, the criteria is there must be a contract, right? There must be a contract between both business to business.
Okay.
And also the employees under the business that's being contracted cannot serve the clients of the business that's hiring.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. So there is, there is, otherwise it kind of gets blended, right? Like, as they're technically employees of the hiring business.
Yep. Yep.
And then, yeah, and so the agreement between both business to business must really specify the relationship. And now we even have, I mean, we even have, if it's not business to business, now we have the agreement that is a requirement too when hiring an independent contractor. But essentially, that's what it comes down to. So it comes down to really having an agreement, making sure that, again, like you said, they're not the only clients, right, of the hiring entity.
Right.
Like, if I'm going to hire, and like, say, for example, I'm going to hire someone to do like benefits for me, right, as an extension of my HR services, then I cannot be their only client that they
Right.
are serving. They actually technically do have to be in business.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing, how is with seeing as many clients as I do through the SBDC, you get one call, then you get another call, and you get to see repeated patterns and trends a lot. So starting about a year ago or so, when they started really pushing AB5 again, I started getting calls from the clients saying, I need to get in an LLC right away. And of course, I'm asking, well, why? What's going on? And I this is happening a lot. They are trying to get a client, or they're trying to apply for some kind of grant or some kind of government type situation, and they're telling them that only LLCs can apply. Or, and this is one that I hear a lot, I have been working as an independent contractor for my client, only client, for some time, and I'm a sole prop. And they said if I was to continue to be able to do business with them, I had to get an LLC so I would be legit. So I'm seeing people being forced to get the LLC immediately, which
Mhm.
a lot of them is a situation, some of them in this happened, where somebody was forced to get an LLC before they could even bid on a job for the customer. And
Mhm.
they didn't have any confirmation that they would even get it. So they had to go through setting this up just on the grounds that they may get this contract. So I'm seeing a lot of that in the marketplace. Now, if it is something that people can do and it works, great, then that may be a workaround. But I got a funny feeling it's not as clean of a workaround as they're believing it to be. So thoughts on what I'm kind of saying is just something I'm experiencing.
Yeah, I think yeah, I don't know why they would make them get the LLC. I mean, if they're technically in business as a sole prop, right? But I think maybe people have this misconception that so as long as you have like an LLC, then we're going back again to your point, like we're protected, right? Like
And
this
that's what it is,
person
because I
can.
have them ask the customer, I go, are they demanding this because of AB5? They go, yeah, they did mention something about it. So they literally are thinking that they are protecting themselves by forcing the others to get the LLC. And I go, well, they're not.
Yeah, yeah, they're not.
Do
They're
you
not.
see
That's
any
not.
precedents on this one, though? I know you're seeing precedents coming in where people are independent contractors and being questioned. Do you see any, or I shouldn't say precedents, are you seeing any more clarification on this bona fide aspect of C? Because I feel as though this one is the new, whenever there's a law, there's a new pathway people try to take. I'm noticing more C is what, they kind of like, okay, we can't get away with B. I'm a yoga instructor and I'm hiring somebody to do yoga, or I'm, doing this. They can't get away with B. So now what they're trying to do is work C to the best they can. I think that's the newest trend. And like I said, I applaud them. I'm not saying anything against
Yeah,
this
yeah.
because I understand the reasoning. But that's what I see now happening is they're trying to modify C as the requirement. And I don't know to what success that's going to lead.
Well, I mean, if they're still in the same line of business, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they
it
are.
it ju- it just counters, it overrides it.
That's
You
what I wondered, Tamara,
Yeah.
because it's okay. I got an I'm C, but doesn't A, and see, this is what I was telling them. In my understanding, ABC is all three. So if you're a bona fide, but you still are in the usual course of business, that doesn't allow the hiring, which seems so bizarre to me because that's what even corporations have done. They decentralize by hiring people that do the same thing they do to be able to grow. So is it even
Yeah.
saying that I can't even hire this competitor that's doing the exact same thing I do to add to my infrastructure because it's still in the usual course of business?
You know, that's where I would say it's kind of like taking that chance, right?
Yeah,
Whether or not you're within the bounds of the law or you're kind of taking a risk, because I would think it like, I would think that that's actually legit, right? Like
right.
that's two different companies. They happen to be kind of in the same line of business, but they're just two separate companies. But going back to that one example we've talked about in the past about this one business owner that was a fashion designer, and she had hired these models to model makeup for her, which is kind of like an addition, right? Like in
Mhm.
addition to her business. And then EDD still found them to be part of her business. Although these models had their own business, their own websites, their own clients, EDD said, no, this is like an integral part of your business, and they are technically employees. Now, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know. I'm just going to be devil's advocate here. Like, we all can interpret things, but I don't know if, like, because that was right after the COVID, the pandemic, right? And we had the, unemployment insurance, the
Yeah.
pandemic, like
Yeah.
it was depleted basically,
Right.
all
It
those.
was.
Okay. So I don't know if that played any part into
Yeah.
like, coming to this conclusion from EDD, or if they are being really that literal with, with interpreting the law. So
Yeah, I agree. And I know that, I'm too old to not know this, and I'm too old to not care about not saying it, is that government does enforce sometimes when coffers of money are low. Did you like that way of saying it? I think that was a pretty good. That just came out of my mouth. I was like, that's a pretty good way of saying it. And where I'd like to kind of go full circle with our AB5 discussion, like I said, this isn't about whether or not you're going to hire an employee. This is scalable growth of your company and what your options are. But I think as we look at this, I can't go without mentioning, and we talked about this before the show, is as we are kind of dancing around saying, well, I don't know, it could be, it could not be. It may sound strange to people, like, is it the law or is it not? And we have to go back and recall that the way our systems are set up is our legislative body makes the laws, and a lot of times they have vagueness to them. Sometimes they're just written that way, but sometimes it's because they really don't know how applicable they are to every situation. And then the judicial system, in this case EDD, interprets the law. So a lot of times with new laws, you don't quite know how it's going to be
yeah.
interpreted until you're up in court, and you don't really, I hate to say this, but there's truth in this, Tamara. You don't know if you're really breaking the law or not sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of times you don't.
Yeah,
And us in HR have always taken the stance of like, the the one with to be with the most caution, right? Or to
yeah,
take
yeah,
the least risk, what's going to be the like when we're working for um larger companies, they focus on like, okay, what's the most beneficial to the employee, because technically that's that's how laws tend to look at things.
yeah.
What would have been the most beneficial thing to the employee. And so a lot of times we we err on the side of caution because we don't know how
You don't know.
this is
Yeah.
going to be interpreted.
And it comes back to, and when you're dealing with bigger companies, absolutely, it's like crazy to not use some of your money to support everything HR so you don't have problems. But when you're really between a rock and a hard place with a small company that you literally cannot afford to have an employee, you can't afford to transfer them to employees. And so it's not a matter of luxury or choice, it's a matter of, I'm going to say it, survival. It's a matter of survival.
Mhm.
So I think and why I like and talk about AB5 a lot, and I like to talk about it in this plain English, plain explanation, is I think that reality overrides certain things. You know, when there's no more money, there's no more money. Reality is true, right? So it's my suggestion, I'll word it this way, and like I said, I'm owning this, is that everybody in business needs to be aware of AB5, whether you have an employee or a hiring independent contract, you need to be aware of AB5. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lecture that says make sure you put everybody on an employee, because I live in a world that faces reality. I live in a world that understands finance, right? So I cannot legitimately make that statement. But I can say that you have to be so conscious of it that if you are perhaps hiring a non-bona fide company or something, be very conscious of that relationship. Make sure you're knowing who you're hiring, making sure you know of the risk. I always would say to clients on the finance side, as far as sales, you don't want to have what we call in banking a concentration of receivables, meaning you only have a few customers, because that's very risk, right? So I always say, if you are in a financial position of only having a few customers, be aware of that risk and kiss the what to that customer, and then try to move away from it. I think with AB5, it's kind of the same thing. If you're, taking a chance hiring an independent contractor, be very conscious of who you're hiring.
Mm-hmm.
Communicate well.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't want to be in that situation with this one client I had. And a lot of times, the sad thing too is a lot of times the workers are more savvy in these employment laws than business owners. That's what I get to see sometimes. Like in the case of this person that told this client of mine, hey, hire me as an independent contractor. Yeah. That's fine. I'm okay with that. And unbeknownst to them, right? Like all the criteria behind it, they're thinking like it's easier, less paperwork. I don't have to do anything else.
Right.
And down the road, this employee sues the employer, and then they go file for this EDD thing. So those are the things that also need to be taken into consideration. Like, how likely is this person to come back after me if I'm having them as an independent contractor? And by no means am I saying like don't hire people or don't hire independent contractors. What the goal is for you to be able to have all the information you need to make a sound decision that's going to work for your business, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We live in a world of risk. We just got to mitigate it.
Yeah. If you're going to hire employees, I'm not saying don't hire employees because
Right.
a lot of people say that, well, I'm never going to hire employees and deal with it. That's not what this is. Really is like knowing the risk, knowing like all the requirements as an employer or as a small business that will be applicable to you, and then taking the steps to either comply with those requirements or take a risk, right? Like that's really, your options. Like if you're going to hire people, then you want to do the right way and mitigate that risk as much as possible, right? If you're going to hire independent contractors, then you want to also mitigate that risk as much as possible. Have your contracts in place. Have, make sure that they have workers' comp insurance, right? Make sure, all the steps that go into protecting your business, essentially.
And that was really beautifully said. And I'm just going to make this one comment, and then we're going to go to something else. But with the Olympics coming up and everything, a lot of the small companies are trying to apply for these type of opportunities. I'll just call it opportunities across the board, right? And they're exposing themselves to the government in a way by doing this. And so that's what I've been, people are like, I'm going to apply for this. And they're going to go through their documents, especially like if you're a corporation. I've seen them ask for your minutes and different things, your stock register, right? So I'm having a lot of people that didn't set the legal structure up correctly. They're trying to apply for some of these opportunities, and we're having to get the documents in order. So it's about exposure. And I think it's really opportune time for us to be talking about this, because someone could inadvertently just go, oh yeah, I'm going to, try to get an opportunity here, and not realize it could subject your books to more inspection.
Yeah. And then that's a great point, Lori, because when doing contracts too, on the HR side of things, they want to see, if they have criteria like, okay, this business needs to have this much workforce to be able to support this
Right.
project.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that you have everything right. You have workers' comp insurance, you have everybody on payroll. There are no independent contractors, because when companies don't have employees, or when they have independent contractors, that can open liability for the contract, right? Or for the government entity.
Yeah.
Because they can be like, okay, well, you don't have workers' comp, then that falls on us.
It
You don't
does. It
have
does.
people as employees, then if someone complains or files a lawsuit, then that can potentially fall on us. So they're looking at it from a risk stance as we're talking about these things as well. So
And then I have to mention from a financial perspective, because I've talked about this with people. Some people think, well, this is great opportunity. No, you have to change your business structure because they do want workforce. You're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to do this and do that. It's not profitable for you to do. So sometimes these opportunities are not really opportunities at all. Before we run out of time, minimum wage. While we're talking about hiring, let's end costs. You were telling me something's gone down with the minimum wage. So update us on that.
yeah, so we have some cities across LA County and unincorporated LA County that have an increase to their minimum wage as of July 1st. So I just want to make sure everybody knows about that. They update their payroll systems, and they're compliant with that, because believe it or not, people do look at those things. They do audit for minimum wage compliance. So the cities of Pasadena, Malibu, Santa Monica, unincorporated LA County, Los Angeles, and I think I got them all. Was that 6 of them? Santa Monica, Malibu, Pasadena, Los Angeles, unincorporated LA County, West Hollywood is the other one. Yeah, so they're increasing their minimum wage. And then one thing to keep in mind, it's too that it doesn't only apply to companies that are within the demographics of those cities. If you have employees that actually perform work more than a certain amount of hours within a week in those city boundaries, then they technically are entitled to that city's minimum wage as well. So if
and
you
that
have
differs
questions,
by city, right? It's not like one number. It differs, like a city each has its own increase to minimum wage, or is it a number across all of those?
there's different rates.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, there's different rates. A couple of them have the same rate, but most of them do have different
What do
rates.
we add about just in general? Give me an example of one.
So unincorporated LA County and I believe City of Los Angeles do have the same. Oh no, Santa Monica do have the same rate, but the other cities do have different rates. Yeah, and then also if people don't know if they fall within unincorporated LA County, I'm happy to help with that, because it is a vast area, and it's not just people think like, oh, if I'm in LA County. No, it's not all of LA County. It's unincorporated LA County, those neighborhoods that are not an official city of their own. So for example, we have like Altadena, Eagle Rock, Sherman Oaks, Van Nuys, all those areas fall under unincorporated LA County. So if people have questions, they can feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help them with that. But yeah, be happy to help with answer with those questions.
Perfect, because that brings me to something I wanted to allocate enough time, possibly need more time for that. But here's the situation. So yesterday, talking with a company that is struggling to try to put their independent contractors to employees, and they had a lot of just business questions for me. They asked me a business question that I would not have answered the way I did years ago. I was almost surprised to hear myself say it, but this is what I said. So are you ready for the business question? Amongst many business questions, they asked me this one. They said, do you think we need to outsource to an HR expert, or can we handle that in-house. Now, this is right after I told him that I could help him to understand how to handle his own annual minutes for his corporation in-house. So he's, of course, thinking, okay, good, I can do this too. And I said, I would have said yes years ago, but today I think that even if you're the smallest company, you probably should have at the least a consultation with an HR expert if you're not outsourcing it fully. I said the laws are just way too complicated, and the words I used was convoluted because I feel like it is, that you really, it's next to impossible to know everything going on and stay up on them, that anybody that is a small company, even with one employee, needs an HR expert to consult with in some degree. So here's it. I said that. I wouldn't have said that.
I love the answer.
I wouldn't have said that before. So here is the question. Is DIY HR still possible, or even with ChatGPT? I don't think so. What's your comments to that?
I don't, well, actually, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And it's because we're seeing laws change like every 6 months here in California, right?
Yeah.
And not only, and it's not only about keeping up with the compliance or keeping up with the laws. When it comes to small businesses, Lori, as you probably see, it's super duper important for them to get their HR correct from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it is just going to cost them a lot of money. And they're not even going to know where they're bleeding money from. Right. They'll probably end up talking to you and saying, yeah, Lori, can you help me with my financials? Because if you don't set it up correctly from the beginning, we're talking about like your handbooks, making sure you have a good culture, right? I'm coming full circle here, I guess, making the connection between the profits when we started talking about starting to have that structure, like your job description, giving the employees like good expectations. And it really comes down to the culture. Okay. Getting that culture right, because this is what I see a lot of times. They'll hire 1 or 2 employees and don't have any of that. No handbook, no job descriptions, nothing, right? So we're just hiring people. But what ends up happening is like then the business goes through like a big growth spurt and you like double or triple that. Now you have 5 employees. Now you have 10 employees. And all of a sudden you start getting like, oh, someone's complaining about harassment. Someone's complaining about this. Someone didn't get paid correctly. Someone's complaining that someone else is getting paid more than they are. They started way after them. So you start having a lot of little things that start like, becoming like snowball effect, right? Becoming big things. And then you have turnover. For example, like you can have turnover, right? That's now eating like your profits because now you're paying constantly for payroll tax and recruiting services. So it's super duper important to get the HR set up right from the beginning. And I wholeheartedly agree that they should get an HR expert in, because that is going to not only ensure that they are in compliance, but they are also setting like their people culture. That's really what it comes down to. Like HR can be simple. In my eyes, HR has 2 functions, and everything else related to HR like supports those 2 functions. One is to hire and one is to fire. Everything else, that's HR. To hire and to fire. Everything else supports that. Like you provide benefits because you want to hire people, you want to attract people. You provide good employee relations and a good culture because you want to retain people. Right. You have policies because eventually if you fire, then you want those policies to protect you, right? So in my eyes, like really HR is simple, but we need to make sure that we are making it as simple as possible for our businesses, and we are hiring the right experts to walk us through that. And when I talk about, I don't doubt that, people have the ability to DIY HR, but why would you take the chance of like bringing in the most valuable asset, right? Because you people can either make it or break it, so why not invest in someone that can actually help you through building up all that HR structure, setting your people for success, which means like, your business is going to be booming, right? If you have happy employees, then they likely are going to have good customer service for your clients, and you're going to have repeat customers, and you're going to have profits. So anyway, I didn't mean to make your the answer long, your question long, but I strongly believe that can they do it DIY? I don't doubt that they could, but would it be as efficient as if they were to hire an expert to actually take that on for them and walk them through every step of the way to maximize their investment in their people?
I agree. And as we end here, I want to bring up one point too. And I thought about this throughout the show, and it's something I talk about financially. When I'm helping people put together forecast, I do models a lot, as you know, I do the modeling, right? I make this rule that nobody ever heard of. When I first tell them this rule, they're like, what do you mean? That's a weird thing to put in the model. But the rule is very simple. If you touch it, there's a cost. And if you do it, there's a cost. So say that I'm doing a financial model for somebody who's baking cookies. I make them estimate their time they do baking the cookies, take the cost of hiring somebody and put it into the financial model. And I tell them, because if you create a financial model based on never hiring anybody or never paying for a computer or never paying yourself, you will create a company can't afford to. Xiomara, this is so important now because you may not have calculated your time in. You may find you can't hire an independent contractor and you have not set your selling price high enough to afford to bring on any employees, and you are dead in water. Okay, you're dead in water. So that financial forecast from a CFO perspective is ultimately so important now. It's not an afterthought anymore. There's no luxury in that. You've got to think it from the very beginning. So I just wanted to make sure I commented on that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is an investment, because when you DIY, like there's a big potential. You may miss things. And how much is that going to cost you in the long run, right?
Well, there's still a way to grow businesses. And like I said, reality is reality. And you know what? It's been going on for eons that people didn't always follow the letter of the law. They go, yeah, when I started out, we were in the garage. We didn't have all the contracts in place. I mean, I'm sure if you go
Yeah,
back to some of these big corporations now in a hush hush discussion, they'll say they didn't pay taxes or they didn't do something. So
yeah,
it's
this
always
is true.
it's always been that way, okay, what do I know I got to do? But every one of them made informed decision. So that's what Small Business Talk is about, is at least giving you the information in a way nobody talks about it, so you can understand what you're up against, what you need to do, what the risk is, and plan accordingly and make a best decision that you can make for yourself at that time. I always say, bring your power back. Knowledge is power, and give a choice to what you're doing. I always say, if I break a law, I'm going to choose doing so. I'm not going to do it not knowing. There's a difference in that.
Mhm.
Thank you, Xiomara, for being on the show so much. I know people just love it. I
Thank
saw
you.
some comments in chat. Please reach out to Xiomara. She is also an advisor at Pasadena SBDC, so you can reach out to her there. And you're still doing webinars quite a bit, aren't you?
I am. I actually don't have one coming up, but we'll probably get one in the books within the next couple months. So we'll keep
Perfect,
you guys
perfect.
posted. Yeah.
You've got her information, reach out to her. And like I said, guys, there's a lot more to think about than just how are you going to use social media and marketing. There's a lot more to think about to be successful in business. Sadie, I better stop. I can go on and on.
I already knew it was going to be, like I said, it started off high energy even before the webinar started. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be quiet because we're too passionate. We are passionate individuals.
Well, with that, Xiomara, thank you again.
Thank
If you're
you.
new
Thanks
to the
for having me.
show,
We'll see you
I
guys
know
soon.
I know you're going to want to come back, because these are the kind of discussions we have. And if you've been here for a long time, I see all the names in the chat. Thank you so much for tuning in every single week to Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. Sadie's going to stay later. She'll give you how to get in touch with me, how to get in touch with Xiomara, how to sign up for more of the shows, how to maybe be a guest on the show. So I got to go. So I'm out of here. I'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lori. All righty, guys, you know the drill. I'm gonna hang out a little bit afterwards. We got this poll going. The interesting thing about this poll is at the end there is an open-ended question. We love hearing what you guys want. Let us know how we can help you. So if there are topics, anything business related, like this goes back to the higher ups, so when we're, saying, hey, what kind of webinars, what kind of resources, information, etc., do our clients need? This is how we get information. So please let us know how we can help you. So fill out that survey. Let me know if you need any links. I've been dropping them down, but let me just make sure I got everything down because everyone's doing the thank yous, and we love it. Who doesn't love hearing some good news, right? So here is Xiomara's information if you want to reach out to Lori. And if you are not yet a client of the SBDC, please get in contact with us. It is absolutely no cost to you. And as you can see, we only have the top of the top business subject matter experts when it comes to the LASBDC. So as I said, I'm very passionate. I love being here and I love helping people. So, and that note, I'm just going to be quiet so we can all just absorb and do what we need to do. Happy Wednesday, guys. See you soon.